Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to yet again another fantastic indie creator interview. It's your Cape Crusader Cody, and we're keeping it geekly with our returning guest, Brendan Albetski. We're here to break down Maru Kiru Destroys the Moon, Chapter 8, and everything in between. And, dude, Brendan, how have you been? Welcome back to the show, man.
It's awesome. It feels like I was just here, but it's been a long time.
You kind of were earlier today, dude. And the thing is, I'm trying to get better at incorporating questions, and like your question, I was like, man, this is the perfect question to end the show with. So, like, boom. Bad. So yeah, I'm excited, man. Had the opportunity to get my hands on a physical copy of this, dude, and I was so geeked out when I opened it up and had the little signature. Oh man. It's so gorgeous. This is such an awesome experience for anyone that might be new, watching, for the first time, not really knowing who you are. Can you give us a quick recap of who you are and a little bit about Maru Kiru?
Yeah, sure. I'll give you a short version. I'm Brendan Albetski, and I make a comic called Maru Kiru Destroy the Moon, which is about exactly what it sounds like. So, Maru Kiru is a kind of a strong and really straightforward and what's the word I'm looking for?
Angry.
Angry. Yeah, angry. That's a nice way to put it. But she's a real nuts and bolts kind of warrior, and her mission in life is to destroy the moon, because that is where a terrible evil god lives, and he gives power to this cult that's kind of ruined her life. So she's out to kill them all and then go blow up the moon. So that's her deal.
And she's really so angry too.
She's very, very mad.
So why is she so mad? Like, what is her problem? Before, I'm trying to think, it's been like, I'm guessing maybe 150 interviews since I last had you on. Mm-hmm. So I'm a little murky. I don't know all the questions that I asked back then. But I definitely would like to talk about some of the influences for her character and character design. I know the long hair, I think, was from your wife, right?
Yeah, it was my wife's COVID hair. Yeah,
but the character herself, the second time reading through the chapters, I kind of picked up a little bit of like a female Kratos vibe, with just like how angry and violent she is.
Yeah, I haven't played God of War all that much, to be honest. Kratos has kind of seeped into the zeitgeist just in general because he's very iconic at this point. Most of the early inspiration was the Conan the Barbarian movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and kind of Arnold plays Conan really stoically, for the most part. If you read like the Robert E. Howard stories, Conan's kind of he's very mercurial. He's ups and downs all over the place. He's either raging at something or he's having a laugh at something. Bruce Timm did this awesome little fan comic called Conan's Favorite Joke. And I think it's one of the best Conan the Barbarian, just little pieces I've seen. It's only 4 pages long, and it's Conan like getting ready to fight some guy and being like really angry and furious, and the guy trips and falls on his own sword and it like goes through his neck, and then Conan starts just laughing hysterically. And that's kind of, I really wanted to layer a much more emotional aspect onto the character. And we really only seen her have opportunity to be really mad at stuff. So maybe we'll explore some other avenues at some point. It's been really nonstop action kind of from the beginning of the comic. So maybe at some point we'll have a moment of mirth in there, but not yet.
she has a little bit of rage to work out. We have take this over on YouTube. Brendan has fun character design, and don't get me started with the colors. Yes, the colors, your style, the palette is just so visually striking. Man, I loved everything about this. So you said there was how many chapters in the book?
There's 5 chapters in the book. I'm holding up 10 fingers, but there's 5 chapters in the book, and then there's like a bonus interlude chapter. And then since then on Global Comics, I've done 6 and 7, and then 8 is coming out on Friday. So,
and all free to read too, right?
Yep. Yeah. On Global Comics, everything's free to read. I've kind of talked before about how I think it's really important to have like a free access option, and I intend to keep it that way for the foreseeable future, really, until I'm in a position where I, for whatever reason, would be able to make enough income from it that it could actually support me, and then I would need that income. But right now I'm in a place where it's like I can give it away to people who can't necessarily afford to buy the book, especially people internationally who can't afford to have the book shipped to them, because international shipping is just insane. I want to make sure that it's available to people, because that's like the most important thing to me, is that people actually get to read it. So.
And then real quick, right there is the Global Comics link to check out all those chapters. All the chapters, all 7 chapters are on there. And you said, what date are you releasing the chapter 8?
Friday. Yeah, Friday the 10th. Yep.
Let's go. So give us a little bit of a catch up from what has happened in the book. What we're going to do tonight, guys, is take a look at chapter 6 and 7, kind of lead you up to chapter 8. But in the meantime, what has happened since then?
So at the end of the book, the first volume, spoilers if you haven't read it, but it's been like 6 months now, so the spoiler window is closed. But so at the end of the first book, Maru was going to a city called Tanaris, and with the goal of finding somebody that could guide her through the jungle into the tomb of Quzar the Undying, to find a sword that would not explode whenever she tried to use it, so she could then proceed to blow up the moon. But anyways, so she went to Tanaris and things didn't go super well, and she ended up in the arena, arrested and tried for heresy, trial by combat, of course, which she won the trial by combat. But then the ruler of the city, Juval, did not care for that outcome, so decided to take matters into her own hands and declare the result of the contest null and void, and restart the combat with some magical shenanigans. So that's where the book ended, is on with some kind of magical necromancy and puppetry of the dead champion. Chapter 6 is a flashback. So
okay.
You want to know why my Maru Kiru is so angry at everybody? We start to answer that question a little bit in chapter 6. We don't get the full answer in chapter 6, but we kind of start to get a little bit of that backstory. And then chapter 7, we go right back to the combat, and we see how kind of the tables have turned. And then, of course, here's super spoilers. At the end of chapter 7, and if you haven't read chapter 7 yet, just don't plug your ears for a minute and go read it. But at the end of chapter 7, Maru Kiru gets obliterated by a big old magical punch bomb kind of situation, and is sent into somewhere else. And that is where chapter 8 picks up, is kind of a where the hell are we sort of situation. And I took the opportunity to do a lot of really weird experimental things. And you read the preview that I sent you for chapter 8. Yeah. So that things kind of get a little weird. And one thing I'll kind of give you the spoil for chapter 8 is that there is no text in chapter 8.
I was about to ask.
Yeah. There are a lot of
something's a lot different here.
Yeah, full conversations occur, but there is no text in chapter 8.
So what made you go that direction? That seems like it's kind of a hard pivot from the previous chapters.
Yeah. Have you read New X-Men by Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely?
I haven't.
Okay, that's what made me do it. I'm ripping off Morrison and Quitely. There's a chapter in New X-Men where Jean Grey and Emma Frost go into, I think it's Professor X's brain, and while they're in there, they're essentially in a dream world, and they cannot speak verbally to each other, so they are forced to use like symbology, and it still comes out in the form of like dialogue bubbles, but they can't use any words. So I'm like, oh no, I'm just gonna do that.
Yeah. Hey, and I just wasn't sure if maybe I'm like, okay, well, maybe he just doesn't want me to have an idea, like read the letters. That happens. The letter,
I'm calling it the hot take issue, because you're either going to think it's the greatest thing I've ever done, or you're going to hate it.
the letter for Marvel that month was probably like, come on, guys, like, what about me? Speaking of that, though, you do all of it, right? The writing, the illustration, the lettering. Can you give us a little bit about your history as an artist? Coming up, how did that look for you?
Yeah, I started making my own drawings when I was like 21, 22. And the idea was I was the editor of the comics page at my university at UConn, and I realized that I could get $5 per comic if I was publishing my own comics in the paper. So I was like, the ultimate form of nepotism. So I actually had 2 comics in the paper at the time. It was one that I wrote and drew, and one that I was just writing, and another guy named Brendan was drawing it. And I was a terrible artist, and I really just wanted to be a comic writer at the time. And I had a lot of really big ideas for like this space opera thing that I wanted to do, and I had a lot of artist friends who I tried to like convince to draw it for me, and I had no idea kind of the work that went into it at the time. So none of them ended up wanting to do it, and I'm like, well, it can't be that hard, I'll do it myself. Here we are 10 years later, or 11 years later, I think at this point. And I think only in the past couple of years have I really gotten to a point where it's like, yeah, now I'm making comics that are good and people want to read them. So it's been a long trip, but self-sufficiency has kind of been always my thing. It's like, I don't want to have to rely on somebody else. And that came a lot from, I had a lot of friends who were artists, and I decided I would rather have them as friends than as artists.
Yeah. So were you much of an artist beforehand?
No.
So what did you do? Did you like beat up the other Brendan and take his abilities? Like,
no, he's still out there making comics, as far as I know. We kind of lost touch, and I haven't really talked to him in quite a long time. But
he's seen that you took off. He's like, I'm not the superior Brendan anymore. I gotta step into the shadows.
I don't know about that, but no, it's like I don't know. I became like my obsession, and I just kind of kept working at it, and I never got disheartened, because there was a really long period of time where I was very, very bad at it. And I was lucky to have those same people who I tried to bully into making my comics for me were paid me back by being extremely supportive of my efforts to actually draw. And I'm very thankful for that. So it's just been something that I've been obsessed with for like the past decade. And there's no signs of slowing down. Everything's just picking up now. I'm really, in the past year or so, I've just been a snowball. We were talking a little.
Yeah, you're prolific, man.
Yeah. I'm getting to the point where I'm buried under. Like I said, I'm working on 3 comics simultaneously right now. I was talking to DC Horn earlier this week, and he's got a couple more that he wants me to do. So it's like, I'm never going to turn down work. So I guess I just better figure it out. I'm not quite ready to quit the day job yet, but we're getting there.
Yeah. We have Christine, and I'm sorry if I butchered this pronunciation. Camus, throwing a face red heart shape emoji in the chat over on YouTube. Thank you for stopping in, Christine. We appreciate that. So let's go ahead. I think right now would be a perfect pivot. Let's switch over to Global Comics, and we'll check out chapter 6, chapter 7, and kind of build up some of the anticipation for the chapter 8 release. So let me get this set up over here.
Hold on 1 second. I've got notes, and I spent all day making this little note sheet, and then I closed it. So yeah, you want to talk about while you're getting that up, I got a couple more notes I can talk about chapter 8. But obviously in chapter 8, Maru's going somewhere else. I'm not necessarily going to tell you where that is. You'll have to read the chapter and find out for yourself. But one of the things you're definitely going to notice is that like the color palette shifts. And the way that I kind of like shade and highlight has changed a little bit as well, kind of just to signify that there's an otherworldly quality to it. And of course, my favorite thing to do in comics is to be super vague in the way that I tell a story. I love David Lynch. I think he's an asshole. And I'm sorry, can I swear on this show? I don't remember. Yeah. Okay. No, I love David
now.
Yeah, it's too late now. Yeah, I love David Lynch, but I think he's a real jerk. When it comes to some of the ways that he tells stories, and like Twin Peaks. When I watched Twin Peaks: The Revival, I dubbed it "Old Men Struggling the Series." But I just love the way that he does stories sometimes, and he refuses to elaborate on anything. It's like it's what's on the page. Like figure it out for yourself. And that's going to be a big part of chapter 8 is figure it out for yourself. So
do you want your readers to kind of just form their own like opinion of what's happening in the story, kind of like a form your own like what's going on like with the dialogue and such, or what do you want your readers to take away with chapter 8?
There's a definitive thing that's happening, and I feel like if you puzzle through it, you'll figure it out. There's another writer who I've gotten really into in the past year named Gene Wolfe, who wrote the series of books called The Solar Cycle, and I've only read the book of the New Sun and 3/4 of the way through the Book of the Long Sun. And Gene Wolfe is he's another guy he doesn't explain anything, and it's like you sit down and it's almost like putting together a puzzle. You sit down, you've got all the pieces, and by the time you get to the end of the story, you figure out what's going on. But you're gonna feel a little bit lost at the beginning of it. So that's really the effect that I'm hoping to achieve, and some kind of just weird sci-fi elements to add to this, because it's a fantasy comic, but there's a little bit of sci-fi element to it, in my opinion. I mean, there's robots on the shirt, so.
So right here we are looking at chapter 6. For everyone that is watching, feel free to watch this with us. Check it out. Share it. Word of mouth is 100% free. So put this on Twitter, put this on Facebook, put this on everywhere you can. I love the way you play with like the flowing hair, like you just like into the interiors, like how it just like or this is his cape, isn't it?
That's his cape. Yeah.
Yes. But you do a good job of doing that with her hair too, like how you kind of just have her hair just everywhere and just wrapping. It's awesome. I love the way you fill out the page with your art.
That's you gotta credit Todd McFarlane for being the inspiration behind that. I'm not the hugest McFarlane fan, but just because I haven't really crossed his path a lot, but I read early Spawn for a podcast ages ago, and I was just in love with the way that he draws capes and fabric and clothing, and everything's always blowing in the wind, and it just looks awesome. So it's like I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna do that. And yeah, you've definitely hit on something with like Manitotas and his cape and Maru Kiru and the hair. They're kind of they mirror each other in a lot of ways. He's also a very emotional character, as you may have noticed. But
I also love just like I smell the indignity. Like, damn, dude. Like,
yeah, he's kind of a jerk. He's a nasty fella.
So what are we seeing happening in these early pages?
So this is like I said, is a flashback, and we know that Manitotas is he's the high priest of the moon. He's the leader of the cult of the moon. But all we've really seen him done up to this point is sit on a mountain and yell at people. So I wanted to give him a little bit of a moment to be an evil asshole. And that's really what the start of this chapter is he has, this is the end of a fateful encounter where pretty much everybody who was going to die has already died at this point. There's this one guy left, kind of a cowardly warrior taking a last stand, and he really just takes his time with this guy and picks him apart in a ways that he doesn't need to, but he's enjoying himself because he's a bad dude. So
I'm loving this armor too. What was some of the inspiration behind this character design?
I like things that I follow a lot of like Eastern European fantasy artists, whose name, a lot of them are named Artyom, and which is kind of a joke in the community. But there's another guy named Ramon. I can't remember his last name. It's either Perez or Perales. He does a lot of cool fantasy stuff. He did a comic called The Grotesque Jarcha for La Mancha, which is about Don Quixote. But a lot of those design sensibilities, and they come from like the 70s and the early 80s, and like early tabletop kind of stuff, really gritty fantasy stuff. That is a lot of what inspires me to make costumes, and I don't do it in the same way that those guys do. They really have like a very vintage feel about them, and they're amazing artists. But that's where I kind of take the inspiration for a lot of my costumes. And early on in designing the costumes, I'm like, okay, everybody in the comic is either going to be like wearing almost no clothing at all, or they're going to be covered in like rags and furs and stuff. It's like those two poles and nothing in between.
I would say the fur around the shoulders kind of reminded me a little bit of like the Dark Souls 2, like the armor set in there. Yeah. I mean, I've played Souls games. I'm very bad at them, but I do own them all. I think that's the fun of it, right? It's just being horrible at it and getting smashed. Like
yeah. No, that's definitely that kind of aesthetic, the dark fantasy costuming, which looks a lot different when I do it, because I do like a super saturated color palette instead of most artists that work there kind of do the earth tones and such and such. But
and this
I like
splash
pink
page,
and green.
It's freaking gorgeous. The way you have the cape, like just wrapping up, filling up the page, splitting, grabbing the head off. Like, dude, this dude is one badass mother.
What was most important to me about this encounter was that for Mandatatis, this is like a game, and it's funny for him. He thinks he's having a good time, and he thinks this is hilarious. And like popping a guy's head off like you would like a dandelion or something is something that both he can do and that he thinks is very funny. So
man, this is gorgeous. Like I just love like you have like this setting in the background. What are these colors right here? Like, dude, these greens and this like neon like greenish right here is just gorgeous.
Yeah, there's some of them I work RGB for the most part, and I'm trying to be better about doing things that will hold true to printing in print. But every so often I get drawn back to it. I'm like, people are going to see this in digital first. And some of these RGB greens just look so freaking cool popping off the page. So like the moon and the yellow and the green there, that's all going to print true to color. The sword might come out a little bit darker just because that tone is a real RGB tone. And I work with there's like teal in there. I blend all my own colors usually. And I do it from either I have a cyan, I have a magenta, and I have a yellow that I'll just play with levels on. And I have all of my Clip Studio documents end up having like 200 layers when I'm done with them because I'm like shifting around opacities and stuff, and I don't want to merge anything until I am at like the final checkpoint because stuff changes as I go through the page, and oftentimes I'll like completely switch around the way I'm doing the palette in the process of making the page. So
we have Christine over on YouTube. Your color palette is everything. It really is. It seems like you have such a strong focus on certain colors as well. Like, is there any like certain symbolism behind that, or are those just the ones that you have the most fun with?
It's a little bit of both. The pink that I use for the most and that like hits the highlights on Maru Kiru's hair, that was originally going to be red. And the reason that was originally going to be red is because when I started working on this in the first place, I was taking it from a standpoint of like, I'm going to make a shonen comic, and shonen heroes have always got like either like a red hat or like Luffy's got the red vest, or there's always some kind of red element in those heroes' costumes. So I wanted to have that be like a really quick visual cue, and then I changed it later. So whatever. But the moon is green. Green's the bad color. So I think it looks really ominous and menacing. I think it's the most evil looking color, and that's what I wanted to go with for that. So they play really well opposite each other. Not super great for people who have some kind of color blindness, so I might try to figure out a way to help with that in the future.
They just stare at the screen and start screaming, "What's going on?"
something that I do try to do to combat that is and this was something that early on Matt Garvey, who did comics, I Took a Hammer to Hell and Big Fuck Off Worms and a bunch of other cool stuff. He reviewed one of my early comics on his YouTube channel as kind of like a creator, like help you make your comic better kind of thing. And one of the things that he told me was like, you need to do more with the way that you do like your color levels and your saturations, and so I try to make it so that you have like really bright white highlights on things, so that if you can't see the colors super duper well, your values should still hold true. I do everything before I publish anything, I throw a black layer on and I do saturation only, and I see it in grayscale. And if it doesn't read in grayscale, then I go back and fix it until it does, because that's kind of important just visually, and it's a good, I think it's a good thing to just kind of do as a check. It's like flipping the canvas. It's a good thing to put on your checklist before you.
So what taught you that? Like how what like made you want to go? Because that seems like a pretty extreme depth to do, but it seems like something like you would want to do to ensure you have good product. Like the quality of your product is just like through and through. Like that's genius, man.
Yeah. I was talking also with and this is I started a Mastodon account, which I don't pay enough attention to, but one of the things that Mastodon has you do is they really want you to do text descriptions of all your images. And my wife has an uncle who is vision impaired, and he is really involved in doing like text to speech apps for people who are vision impaired, so they can like read the news and doing stuff like that. And so I don't have that kind of level of accessibility for my comic yet. I really would like to get there and actually have all text descriptions on everything. But it's something that I started to consider. It's like it's a visual medium, but I need to try to make it as accessible as possible, because I know that a lot of people don't have the visual ability to see things the way that I do. So I want to make sure that everybody can enjoy it. So I think that value coloring is kind of really key to my process now. It's not something that I initially was, and it's made me quite a bit of a better artist, I think. Everything just pops so much better. But it's all about trying to make comics that everybody can enjoy. I'm not all the way there yet, but it is something that is always on my mind, and I'm trying to get there. So
we have Christine agreeing in chat, saying that's brilliant. So right here, this is an interesting page. We kind of see her seeing the sword for the first time, and then a flash forward to her being just completely smashed.
Yeah. So at the end of chapter 5, it was a really hard fight, and she won. But it kind of like took everything out of her, and then it was like, oh, you're not done yet. So yeah, but this chapter 6 was really, I wanted to establish kind of the determination of Maru Kiru, and the point being that she's like, as a child, kind of understanding how hard her life was going to be, and pursuing her quest anyways. So that's kind of her whole deal, is she's never going to back down. And she like there's no end in sight for her, and she's never going to give up. So that was what chapter 6 was all about for me.
So
then I did some extras.
Can we talk a little bit about when she gets really mad, her eyes turn completely pink, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So
it's not just when she gets really mad, but that is an aspect of it.
So is there any, what's happening there? Is that kind of like when she's at her full power, or?
Yeah. So one of like her, what makes her special, and we don't fully understand this yet, but Yaga, the character with the big hat, who has not appeared in quite a while because she doesn't like cities and she didn't come to this adventure. But she explained early on that magic is something that the Cult of the Moon has kind of pigeonholed as being, they've got it all, they've bogarted it all, it's all for them. So there's just a couple of important asshole wizard priests that have all the power, and make everybody else beg for scraps, essentially. And so Maru Kiru's thing is like, she can use magic. And we don't understand why she can do it yet, but for whatever reason, she's the only person who can take power herself and make use of it. So she kind of taps into it with her anger and her rage, but it also puts her in a place where she can't control it like at all. So she gets like one big giant attack out of it, and then whatever weapon she's using usually melts into a puddle. And she's kind of all out of juice.
So are those wizards like a metaphor for anything? It kind of seems like it might be.
Are they? Gee, I don't know.
Seems like it might be hinting towards something. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh God. I don't know. I wouldn't want to put any kind of political messaging in a comic, but.
Oh yeah, that doesn't happen, does it? So we're seeing that kind of happen right here with the eyes, right? Like it seems like right here she's about to experience a little bit of a power up, or kind of just go into rage mode.
Yeah, in chapter, so at the end of chapter 5, she kind of blew everything she had to kill Solmo. And at the beginning of chapter 7 here, when she's being manhandled and taken apart, she really does kind of push beyond her limits and summon that power up again. But if you'll continue flipping through the pages, you'll see that it's not enough this time. So and she actually does she gets messed up pretty bad in this chapter.
And I just love the way you are like doing your paneling right here. Like right here, like we have the whole ticket at the bottom page, and then just the sinister smile in the eyes, like kind of just paneling right there. Like this is gorgeous.
Thank you. I had a lot of fun doing this one.
Wow, this is one hell of a slash page right here too. So what's happening right here? It looks like she's kind of exploding a little bit.
End of the line, baby. This is it. Comic's over. She lost.
Ooh, and they want her to beg too, and that's something she does not do.
No, not even a little bit. So, yeah, this is kind of the transition. And we're in a bad way here, obviously. But
I really love how you have like the leg and the hand kind of just like silhouetted right there, and you can really tell it's her because of the hair. Like the hair is like such a strong symbol, like, and I love the way you utilize that. Like, it's her without it like in your face showing you it's her.
Yeah, somebody asked on Twitter the other day, like when you take commissions or when you're designing characters, do you tell writers not to put tattoos on characters? And it's like, I don't, because if your character's got tattoos, then cool. My characters tend to not, or if they do, they're really simple. Because I drew a little fan piece for Sparkle Arts and Celestis, and
with the tattoos,
Yana has got like full body ink everywhere, and it's like, oh, that's really cool. But now I'm gonna do a piece of fan art, and you've got like 6 additional art pieces on your character
6 pieces of
that I gotta do. So. It's like, yeah, I tend to shy away from that or do something like really simple. I had a character once, a design that I didn't use, that might show up at some point, but he had like a really cool tattoo that was just like a big circle that went around, like it was the empty space was the shoulder, and there was like the circle wrapped around his back and on his chest. And it's like, I thought that was a really cool, simple design that I could draw from far away and you'd be able to tell. That's like my biggest deal with all the Maru Kiru characters. It's like, you got to be able to tell who they are from like bird's eye view. And so far I think I've done a pretty good job of that.
Yeah.
We haven't had like a huge cast yet, if you don't count the crowd. Drawing those crowd scenes, and it was like I had to come up with so many designs that it was like, okay, we're just putting this guy here and this guy here. I put in cameos from literally every comic character that I've ever drawn, her hidden in that crowd somewhere. But yeah, we're just trying to make everybody really distinct, and simple and easy to pick out. So
I love right here we have her saying never, just like true to fashion. Real quick, we have Christine over on YouTube. Did one Yana piece and covered all by her Phoenix. We have J. Michael Miller throwing some fire in the chat as well. Welcome to the stream, Jay. How you doing? So, man, what a climatic battle. So right here is pretty powerful too. What's going on in this page?
This was originally just two black pages, but then I was afraid that people reading it on Global would think something was wrong and would stop reading. So I'm like, well, I got to put something on it. And I actually ended up liking this better. Just as a transitional element to show you that we're something's happening, and we're going from one place to another. And of course, that's where we end up here, where sort of the otherworldliness begins, and you can see the colors are completely different, and there's no shadows anymore, and we're in a new place, submerged in water.
I love how you just had the hair kind of peeking through the water just a little bit too. And her hair is so much more relaxed as well, it seems. Or is that just because it's wet?
You read it however you want, I guess. Sometimes when people have good ideas, I'm like, yeah, no, that's totally what I did.
And then we have one interesting character over here. Not a whole lot of dialogue too, so this is kind of where you start bleeding into that, it seems like, where you're not really using a lot of lettering. Who's this creature? And this is one hell of a sword right behind him.
I mean, I do, but I'm not going to tell you.
We have Mama Geekly, speaking of the devil, stopping in to say, I love the hair. Thank you for stopping in. I was just telling Brendan how you've been making every show, and how much you've been supporting it. I mean, he was saying his mom's probably going to pop in at some point too. The battle of the moms, probably going to happen in chat. So right there, guys, be sure to check this out on Global Comics. It's free to read. You have nothing to lose. And speaking of the devil, where can people find the physical copy? I mean, this book is gorgeous. Let's take a look at it a little bit.
Yeah. So it's available if you can buy it directly from me, which I've sold a couple. I sold that one to you directly. You can reach out to me either on Twitter or through my website. But the other place you can get it is from my publisher. So I have a link. It's not an easy URL to read, unfortunately. From Castaigne Publishing at .bigcartel.com. You can find it there, and $20 plus $5 shipping. It's like 100 pages. I think it's a good value. I think you'll enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, I can send you a link. I'll just throw it to you in Discord if you want to have anything to do with it. And yeah, you can get that there. And I'm trying to make more merch available. I kind of fell off the wagon on that, but we'll try to get some merch up at some point, and you can get things like my coffee cup and the shirt and all the other cool stuff.
So what else is up your sleeve for 2023? We were talking a little bit backstage. We were talking a little bit during the interview. You have been really prolific with a lot of like cover art, a lot of fan art that you've been doing. But are there any other projects that you're going to be involved with?
Yes. I'm pretty sure I can talk about all of these at this point, so that's cool. But I'm working on a full series with DC Horn, who does Once Upon a Time in Xanatopia and a handful of other things, called The World Ends in Fire, and that's a fantasy comic, as you might expect. But I'm really excited about that, and I don't have a whole lot to share. DC has all the art, and he's been kind of trying to figure out how to parse it out the best. There's going to be a Kickstarter at some point. The first issue of that is just about done from my end, and then there's probably going to be a couple more this year, so we'll see on that. I'm also working on a short horror comic with Alice Quinn Rose called A Dog and His Lady, which is another kind of experimental no text comic from the point of view of a dog, which was another thing that was kind of serendipitous. I'm like, oh great, I'm going to work this kind of stuff into Maru, Kiru too. So that'll be coming this year. There'll be a Kickstarter for that at some point as well. But really excited. Alice is great, and it's been a lot of fun working with her. And then there might be some kind of animated product coming at some point.
Ooh.
I don't know if you're familiar at all with Autumn Ivy, who does a lot of voice acting and other things. But there was something the other day that was talking about like, ooh, if you were doing an animated series, who would your dream voice cast be? And I just kind of was like, oh, it'd have to be somebody who had like a good low register, could do like real angry stuff. And, if I was dreamcasting, I want Autumn Ivy to do it. And she actually saw that and replied to it. And she's like, yeah, I would do it. I'm like, oh, okay. So we followed each other and we talked a little bit. I sent her a book.
Let's go, dude. A physical book or digital?
Physical book, yeah. And I was like, and I'm like, I gotta tell you, like, I don't have any idea how to put together an animation. I mean, this is all just spitballing. She's like, oh, motion comics are cool. You should maybe think of that. I'm like, so okay, maybe
spitballing for you.
Yeah, maybe I'll figure that out. I need to maybe wrangle up some other voices. I was on the same day. I'm like, well, as long as I'm manifesting stuff, maybe I can get an answer out of someone who do a Manotatis voice. So I was like, Prosy D, what do you think? And he didn't say anything, which I'm not surprised.
Hey, the thing is though, once you get one, you use that one to get the other. Like, hey, I know so and so. Like, we'd love to get you involved too. Like, that's so cool, Brendan. Congratulations.
I'll wait until there's more reality or surrounding that before I actually start physically going after people for that. But it was very cool to meet Autumn and talk to her about this. And she's like a fitness model and stuff as well. So there's actually some Maru Kiru drawings that are kind of based on her. Not the hair, obviously. She'd need about 7 feet more hair, I think. But but from like a standpoint of physique, she's all. If we ever did a live action show, she would be able to play her as well. I think we just need to get like a really big wig.
Work out the neck muscles a little bit so her head doesn't break off with it. I get it. Yeah, but Mama Geekly saying that's awesome. Wishing you loads of luck with that. Don't give up. Thank you for the inspiration. So Brendan, before we let you go. Real quick, where can people find more of your work? How can people commission you if they're interested in getting a cover or any, fan art or anything?
Yeah. So BrendanAlbetski.com. is where my portfolio is, and it's where all my contact information is. You can also just email me, htbcomics@gmail.com. But all that contact info is on my website. Also, just DM me on Twitter. I'm at Hell to Breakfast. Always have been. Probably always will be. Any place you can get a hold of me, I'll take your cons. I'll draw your covers. I'll draw your interiors. Actually, I might not draw your interiors. I might be loaded up on interiors at this point, but still, let's have a conversation. But also, probably the best thing to do if you're just interested in following my work is to follow me on Global Comics. Follow my creator profile, like Maru Kiru. You'll get email updates whenever I put an update out. We're doing 4 updates this year of chapters. First one obviously is going to be on February the 10th, and then the next one's going to be on May 12th, and I'm going to do one every quarter until the end of the year, and that'll take us considerably further in the story. I've scripted out the next chapter today, and I'm like, I'm going to get there this time. I'm going to get to this point. So I'm excited about doing that. And then there's going to be a lot of other cool stuff. World Ends in Fire is going to be coming out this year. That may or may not be a Global Comics exclusive.
Let's go.
DC Horns kind of bandied that around a little bit, but I don't know if that's real or if we're just saying that.
And guys, make sure you check out his store. Make sure you buy the physical book if you want to. He does all this for free, so that is the way to financially support him and help him keep creating, right? Like,
actually, the best way to find the physical book. I was trying to read you the URL before, but if you just go to my website, BrandonAlbetski.com, right on the homepage, there's like a buy the Maru Kiru book, and you just click that. It'll take you right to the store. So
no, that's awesome. That's awesome. So real quick before we let you go, you've been on the show before, you know the drill. We always love asking a piece of advice for anyone who might be new there. So for anyone who is looking to maybe, add some distinction to their character, where they can look far away and be like, that is my protagonist. What advice would you have them, or have for them to offer them to help them achieve that? Because that seems like it's something that's pretty important to have with your character, to have them kind of be noticeable in the distance, just as noticeable as they are up front.
Well, I've got a good answer for that question, and then I have another tidbit that I want to tack on right before the end because I prepared my own just in case. So keeping it simple and really easy to read is your best bet. And the best piece of advice that I got for working on that, and the best piece of advice I think I can give to anybody, is read One Piece and watch One Piece, because Ichiro Oda is like literally the best who's ever been at designing characters that you can spot from a mile away. And some of the designs are wacky and wonky, but it's like you always know exactly who you're looking at. Luffy is like the most simply designed protagonist ever, but he's so iconic. He's just a kid with a hat and a vest, but
that's all you need to cosplay him too.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, don't overcomplicate things. Keep it simple. Don't be afraid to go through iterations. Don't be afraid to let your characters change and grow. The first hang on.
Here, let me change over here too.
This is an early Maru Kiru drawing.
Wow, about 3 feet of hair there.
Yeah, I mean, she had a cape at that point, because I'm like, she should have a cape. And then I got to a point where I was like, well, the bad guy's going to have a cape. She can't also have a cape. So that's where the kind of, the worlds collided and we got the big hair. But, it's going to take time to develop your character the way you want him to be. And, I'm saying keep it simple, but honestly, like sometimes it takes a long time to work to the point of simplicity that you want to stay with forever. And, there's a costume change in this chapter coming up. So, I'm not even like, I really like mirrored here. I really like the costume that I came up with from Maru Kiru. She might come back to a look like this at some point, but, I did decide to change it up a little bit.
Gotta make a new shirt now, man.
I gotta make a new shirt. All kind of new stuff. You look at my new cover image on Global Comics, you'll see kind of a preview of what the new costume kind of looks like. But it's a little more Kirby-esque than things I've done in the past, perhaps. But yeah, I would say, be patient and do the work and listen to feedback from people. If somebody, one of the best pieces of feedback, and this is terrible to say, but one of the best pieces of feedback early on, I got when I was trying to do like gag-a-day strips. Somebody left a comment that was just like, this whole place looks like a big fucking mess. And I was like, oh. But it's something that stayed with me. And sometimes I'll look at my own work when I'm just like, this whole thing was like a big fucking mess. And
like, he was right.
He was right. And I'll just wipe it off and start over. So yeah, be patient with yourself, but kind of know what you want that kind of signature quality of your character to be, and then just make it really pronounced. So yeah, that's how I would do it.
Perfect.
And my homespun advice that I brought with me from home is Twitter is a hellscape. And I see every day a lot of people who I really respect and love as artists just being really down in the dumps, and people who are like honestly very successful at what they've done in art, and they still just kind of feel rotten about it. And I was talking with my friend Zach Semantic, who just released a comic called Saga of the Spaceman on Global Comics. You should check it out, plug. But we were talking about it, and it's like, there's a lot of people who are way more successful than we are, and they're talking like they haven't achieved anything in their lives, and they're thinking of like hanging it up or stepping back. And I'm just like, it's the important lesson, I guess, to glean from that is like positivity is not waiting for you at the mountaintop. The attitude that you bring with you is something that is not going to change when you've achieved your goals. And that's something that I really learned in the past 6 months or so. Is one of the things that I wanted to do forever is like, I want to be a pro, and I want people to pay me to do interiors. And in the last year or so, I finally had that like take off, and I had a bunch of people be like, make my comic, here's money, we'll pay your page rate. That page rate's not high enough, raise your page rate. Thanks, DC. But that was a great feeling for like a day. And then after that wore off, it's like, well, this is just the same old life, and I'm working again. And like, well, what am I supposed to do? And it's like, well, you got to find a way to like bring that positivity with you. Yeah. And be like, you do this because you love it, and because it makes you happy. The work itself makes you happy. It's like, that's why I always want to be the guy doing the work, the guy making the thing. Because it's like, that's what I enjoy. That's what I get out of it. So it's like, think about what you get out of it and cling to that, because you're gonna need it.
we were just talking backstage, and like, a lot of the stuff that I'm doing, like, I was thinking to myself, like, why aren't I doing this? Like, the only thing stopping me from doing this is literally me not doing it. Like, that's the biggest thing holding me back from not doing what I want to do. Like, why am I waiting for someone to give me permission to do what I want to do? It makes no sense. So guys, get out there and do what you want to do. You heard it from Cody and Brendan. Get that shit done. Everyone watching, it is a beautiful Wednesday. Right here is the Global Comics link. Be sure to check this out for free. Be sure to read everything and share it with your friends and family. They will love it just as much. Real quick, we have Mama Geekly. Every successful person started from the bottom and went through a lot of dirt to get to the top. You got to keep going and try not to get discouraged. I think that is a beautiful note to end on. So I hope you all have a lovely Wednesday evening. I almost said afternoon. But most importantly, guys, keep it geekly.